Okay, Art, are we ready to go? All right. This has been really very good for me. I like to just say thank you, Rick. It's helped me a lot. A lot of really interesting concepts that I hadn't really considered before. And honestly, the biggest thing, I think, the word that I'm seeing in the humility aspects. This revival, for instance, that went on recently up at Asbury and everything, I was watching a little video on YouTube, and the girl who was describing what had happened, she was there that night. They were having their, evening service, and the praise and worship team kind of came back up, but the word she used that night was radical humility. And I just thought, well, that's Jesus. There is no better way to sum up radical humility than Jesus. And this verse from Philippians, which I know you guys know, from Philippians 2, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ, the mind of Christ, actually, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. Now, that's not something that's very appealing to most of us. We don't want to make ourselves nothing. We would like to make ourselves something. I would like to stand here tonight and be something, or today and be something. But Christ becomes unemployed the more employed I am. The more I'm doing for Nathan, the less Christ can do through Nathan. So we've all got stories, and they're all good ones. We're all coming from different backgrounds. Mine, I was sort of the Pharisee guy. I was the one, I had the same problem that you describe at First Baptist. I know what it's like to look out and see these, they're just not, they don't measure up. They're not working as hard as I am. I felt like I was the hard-working guy. What I've learned through my journey is that my relationship to God does not improve by me adding stuff to it. It actually improves by me removing things. It's almost like a sculptor with a block of marble. He doesn't add to the marble. He chips away everything that's not a masterpiece. And when he's done, he's down to the masterpiece. And for us in our life, it's almost like our life is this block, and life has its way of chopping it away, and then the very last thing you just exhale your last breath, and then it's nothing but Jesus. And so it's okay to let these things, it's okay to go through what we go through, to strip away everything that's not Jesus. So there's this old poem. My dad used to quote it to me, but I put some music to it, and it's called Life Sculpture. And it kind of sums up that idea about what is our life supposed to be. We chip away until we have what we need. Chisel in hand stood a sculptor boy with a marble block before him, and his eyes lit up with a smile of joy as an angel dream passed o'er him. He carved the dream on that shapeless stone with many a sharp incision. With heaven's own light the sculpture shone. He'd caught the angel vision. Cut away what's not beautiful, like a sculptor carves a stone. And in the end, the masterpiece will be your own. Children of life are we as we stand, with our lives uncarved before us, waiting the hour when at God's command our life dream shall pass o'er us. If we carve it there on that yielding stone with many a sharp incision, its heavenly beauty will be our own, our lives that angel vision. Cut away what's not beautiful, like a sculptor carves a stone. And in the end, the masterpiece will be your own. Cut away what's not beautiful, like a sculptor carves a stone. And in the end, the masterpiece will be your own. Thank you. Let's sing together, "There is None Like You." This is an old praise song, but I love the message. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. Your mercy flows like a river wide, and healing comes from your hand. Suffering children are safe in your arms. There is none like you. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. Your mercy flows like a river wide, and healing comes from your hands. Suffering children are safe in your arms. There is none like you. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long find there is none like you. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you.
I guess that's my cue. Back up. All righty. So I always like to ask any questions, comments, observations, awarenesses from the morning session. Hey, don't we all? Don't we all? That's the neat thing about it, you know? Father's not bothered that we have all this work to do. You know what I mean? That's kind of cool, isn't it? It is what it is. So what? What matters is what do you want to do about it? Anyone else? Alrighty then. This last one is so there's two conversations. I'm reluctant to call them sermons because I don't see myself as much as a preacher, though I'm ordained. I see myself more of a teacher than anything. But there's two conversations that I'm really known for. One is the essence conversation from last night. Whenever I go somewhere, I always do that thing first, and people remember it. I don't like them all, but us likes them all. It just, people get it. It's that simple. But in the simplicity, it's pretty profound, all right? And the other one is this one here that we're about to embark on is the forgiveness conversation. This conversation came from my own journey of having to deal with unforgiveness in my own life, and what I had to work through to get to a place. Because everybody talks about you need to forgive, but people don't understand forgiveness. In the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association, forgiveness was never allowed in clinical practice. If you talk about forgiveness as a psychotherapist, you were using religion, and that was a no-no. And then when I was a professor at Regent University, which is a Christian graduate school, we trained professional therapists there, the first annual conference on forgiveness in clinical practice was held at the University of Maryland by a doctor, a social work professor, Fred de Blasio, who happens to be Christian. Well, I was doing some research at Regent, just kind of on my own, and I got invited to present my data there. So I attended this conference, and Bob Enright came from University of Wisconsin-Madison, very liberal school. He's a Christian. Ed Worthington was there, Virginia Commonwealth University, also a Christian. Those three men, from that day forward, started doing sound psychological studies on forgiveness, emotionally, relationally. And what they proved through sound research, when you forgive, you release depression, you release all kinds of negative emotional effects. And forgiveness actually stores intimacy in relationships, which is what I showed in some of my data. But they're the big guys. If you go study forgiveness research, you're going to see those three guys' names, right? Well, as of today, the APA finally admitted, okay, maybe forgiveness isn't religious. Maybe it's a good thing. Whatever, guys. It just took some men to prove it to them, right? Religions are talking about things that are healthy, psychologically, not just spiritually, right? So now it's a good topic. So we're going to talk about forgiveness, and I'm going to use a passage of scripture to kind of kick that off. And I pull from John chapter 8, all right? And I'm going to read it to you. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives. So Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives, returns to the Mount of Olives, and then he goes back to the temple the next day, all right? So he goes back to the Mount of Olives. The next day he goes back to the temple. It says a crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. Now, you've got to get this in context. He's in some anteroom at the temple teaching a bunch of people. So it's not like he's by himself. He's in a room with a group of people. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who'd been caught in the act of adultery, and they put her in front of the crowd. She's in a room not just with the deacons of Highlands Baptist Church. She's in the room with the members. You think that through, and it can make it real for you. Got it? Not just the religious leaders. She's in the room with the group. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses, they're referring back to Leviticus, the law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? They are trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding an answer. So he stood up again at some point. He stands up and says, all right, but let the one who's never sinned throw the what? First stone. Then he stooped down and began to write in the dust. If you ever hear a preacher preach about what he wrote, don't listen to it. We don't know. For all I know, he could have did emojis. Who knows? When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest. Why the oldest? Because the oldest are a little bit wiser and have more experience. They know what just happened. They understood it. Beginning with the oldest. Until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. So the room is still filled with people. This woman's in the crowd with Jesus. The elders and deacons just left. Then Jesus stood up again and said to her, woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord. Neither do I. Go and sin no more. Go make better choices. I use this as a launching pad to help us understand what forgiveness is and what it is not. Now, the first question we want to ask in this passage is, did the scribes and the Pharisees have a right to stone her? Think about that. Did they have the right to stone her? The answer is they did. They quoted their right. Moses in the law commanded. And if you go back into the book of Leviticus, you will actually see that if a person, not a woman, a person caught in adultery is to be stoned. Got it? What do you think that lady felt when she was caught? Scared? Embarrassed? So there's some fear, there's some embarrassment, a lot of shame. And they haul her down. I learned this from a female many years ago when I was teaching this, because I always asked, what if she felt? And a woman in the congregation said, anger. I went, anger? I said, why anger? She said, there's been an injustice committed against her. And I said, what's that? Where's the guy? And I went, oh my goodness, never thought of that. Thank you, ladies, for pointing that out to this dumb male. All right? That's true. It didn't say only women get in adultery. An adulterer. So I asked a rabbi many years ago, about 20 years ago, a rabbi friend of mine, I pointed this out to him. I go, why didn't they bring him? Why didn't the religious leaders bring this guy? He goes, that's easy, Rick. I said, why? He goes, it was one of them. That's what a rabbi told me. It was one of their own. I went, oh, sounds like today. I thought, whoa. So she would be angry, wouldn't she? Because there's an injustice. She has all these emotions going through her. I don't know if they gave her the opportunity to be clothed or not. I don't know. All right? But here they are, quoting their rights. Now, I'm going to make a parallel for our lives today. They knew they had the right because they quoted their rights. Got it? Here's the parallel. Whenever someone hurts you, wrongs you, or offends you, you also have the right to stone your offenders. And God knows it. This is why he never answered their question. He never answered their question. It says they kept pressing him for an answer because he stooped down. He wasn't going to answer that question because he already knew they had the right. And they knew they had the right. Remember, they asked the question to trap him, right? They wanted to catch him something. See, I don't know that what he was writing had any importance. If you study language techniques and language strategies, have you ever had someone asking you questions, but they really didn't care about an answer? They just ask you questions to try to exploit you, to make fun of you? When that happens, research shows don't answer them. Don't engage the fool in their folly. But if they keep pressing you and pressing you for an answer, at some point in the pressing, psychologically, their motive shifts. And it's like, well, John, what do you think? I think Jesus was waiting for that moment. Because no longer is it about me exploiting you, it's I really want an answer. And I think when they pressed enough and got to that place, that's when he stood up and said, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. Why? They're teachable at that moment. Up until then, they're not teachable. It's just want to be argumentative, right? And it says from oldest to young, they dropped their stones and walked away. So whenever someone hurts you, wrongs you, offends you, this is important, you also have the right to stone your offender. And God knows it. Now, if you turn in your handout that I've given you to the handout on forgiveness, let me help you understand what forgiveness is and what it is not real quick. Number one, we got to get a definition of forgiveness. Forgiveness, and you got your pen, you can do the fill in the blanks there in your handout. Forgiveness is not an emotion. Forgiveness is actually a choice. It's a decision that a person makes to give up their what? Rights. Rights for what? Vengeance, negative thoughts, all right? And retribution towards an offender. Forgiveness is basically saying that I have a right to hurt you. Because see, for every offense, there's a debt, and every debt's going to be paid. But forgiveness, by definition, then, is I give up my rights. I have the right to stone you, but forgiveness is I give up my rights. Rights for what? The rights to get you back. Vengeance, retribution, and negative thoughts towards an offender. You see, Jesus knew they had the right. He knew they had the right. That's why he didn't answer their question. Essentially, what Jesus did is he changed the conversation. He shifted the conversation away from do I have the right or not? He shifted the conversation to this. In a sense, when Jesus stood up and said, you without sin cast the first stone, in essence, here's what he's saying. Guys, I know you have the right because I know that passage in Leviticus as well. I've read it. So I know that you have the right to stone her. We don't have to have that conversation. But before you do stone her, because you do have the right to, I have a question of you. Here's what he did. Who among you is eligible? Who among you is eligible to throw the stone? Because the way I see it, the only one of us in this room who's eligible to cast a stone is the one without sin. So if you're without sin, go ahead. And the older ones, more experienced, understood what just happened. And the young, impetuous ones followed the older ones. Can you see that? He shifted the conversation away from do I have the right to am I what? Eligible. See, whenever someone's hurt you in the past, wronged you, you actually get a stone. And you have the right to throw those stones at your offender. And God knows you do. Because every offense has a debt. And you have a right to pay that debt back to that person. The question isn't whether you have the right to pay it back. The question before all of us is, are we what? Are we what? Eligible. Is anybody in this room eligible? Because if you are, we need to worship you right now. So nobody in this room is eligible. Is that what you're admitting? So here's the problem. I have Here's a stone. I have a stone. I have the right to throw it at my dad, my stepmom, Luella, people that have hurt me. I have the right to throw this at them. The problem is I'm not what? I want, but I'm not eligible. So what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is when I realize that I'm not eligible. Then who is eligible? The one who's what? Without sin. So forgiveness, in a sense, is when you take your stones, which represent unforgiveness, and you give them to the one who can throw the stones, which is who? God himself. Vengeance is mine, Rick. I repay, not you. But if I decide I'm going to throw my stones anyways, I'm going to throw my stones at that person anyways. He goes, that's fine. You have the right. You know you're not eligible, though, don't you? Yes, sir, I know I'm not eligible. Then if you want to throw your stones, you can, because you have the right to. You know you're not eligible, right? I know I'm not eligible. You hear the arrogance in that? You hear the arrogance in that? I'm not eligible, but I'm going to do it anyways? Boy, the epitome of arrogance. You just positioned yourself against him. And then he says, based on Matthew 7 and other passages, then Rick, if you want to throw the stones at the people that hurt you, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You see those people behind you, and you turn around, yeah? Who are they? Oh, those people? Those are the people who have a right to stone you. So I'm going to allow them to stone you, and you tell me if you like it. No, sir. Forgiveness is you give up your rights to the one who can throw the stone. That's God himself. Does that make sense? And then when God takes your stones of unforgiveness and vengeance is mine, I can do what I want with it because I'm without sin. Now, once you give up your stones to God, which is really what active forgiveness is, I'm not going to throw the stone, I'm not eligible, so I got to give it to you. I forgive them, Lord. And I'll show you why forgiveness is meant for yourself in a minute. And then when you give your stones of unforgiveness to God, if God throws your stones at your offender and gives them brain cancer, so be it. Oh, by the way, if he throws the stones at your offender and gives them a $5 million Powerball lottery, so be it. Because once you give these up, you lose all say-so to what he does with it. Are you with me? Yet we'll hang on to these things and we'll cast the stones. And we do all kinds of dirty fighting techniques. Sarcasm, withdrawing, yelling, screaming, manipulating. All of that's you acting out your anger towards someone. It's forms of throwing a stone. All of that is just you acting out your anger because you're resentful towards somebody. And so you throw your stones in all these kinds of ways. Lord goes, you understand you're harming people. Well, they hurt me. Yeah, I know, but you're hurting people too. Well, I don't care. That's the problem, Rick. And who made you eligible to cast a stone? Well, I have the right. I never said you didn't. I said, who made you eligible? You think you're me? Apparently I do. You with me on that one? Now, before we go any further with this, let's talk about what forgiveness is not, all right? And this is really important. Number one, forgiveness is not forgetting. That is actually impossible to do. Lewis Smedes, a great teacher who used to be at a seminary in California, Fuller, wrote a book called Forgive and Forget. He did not like the title of the book. The publisher has kind of forced that title in order to sell it. It is actually impossible to forgive and forget. Forgiveness does not take away memory, all right? Someone might be thinking, well, what about that passage in the Old Testament that says God forgives and forgets as far as east and the west? Go back and read that passage. It doesn't say that. There's a lot of things we say in the church today that aren't in the Bible, like Adam ate an apple. It never said it was an apple. It said it was a fruit. Somewhere along the line we said it was an apple. I personally think it was a mango. You know, who knows? I don't know what it was. It was some fruit. I don't know if it was an apple or not. We just filled it in. People do that here. When you go back and read it, it says this: God forgives and remembers no more. That is not the same thing as forgetting. You ever forgot your car keys? Forgetting is unconscious. To not remember something is a conscious decision. When I forgive you, I have decided to let it go for me. And because I made the decision to let it go for me, and we'll talk about why in a minute, I am not going to revisit it anymore. Why? I decided to let it go, so there's a reason to bring it back up again. When I would discipline my kids, I always said to them at the end, as of this moment, this is a dead issue. To be remembered no more. We won't talk about it again. If you do it again, we'll deal with it as a separate issue. If you do it again, it'll be another separate issue. If you keep it up, we have a pattern problem. And now we have to deal with a pattern of behavior, because that's more indicative of your pattern of who you are. Make sense? We'll shift it at that point. It's a pattern issue. Number two, forgiveness is not necessarily reconciling with someone. Just because I forgive you does not mean we will be reconciled. Reconciliation is a relational construct. It takes two. I do know this, though. Unforgiveness will block the opportunity for reconciliation. Forgiveness opens the doorway for the possibility of, of reconciliation. I forgave, and I'll tell you this story in a little bit. I forgave my stepmother, but we were never reconciled. She didn't want a relationship with me. And that's okay. When God granted forgiveness through the death of his son on the cross, Jesus said, Father, forgive them. He did not say, I forgive you. He said, Father, forgive them. And Father granted forgiveness to all creation. Question, is Father reconciled with everybody? No. Some don't want to be. Make sense? So it's not necessarily reconciliation. Third, it doesn't condone what another person did. Some people think, well, I forgive you, then it condones what you did. It doesn't condone anything. You still get the consequences of what you do. Just because Jesus asked his Father to grant forgiveness because of what he was doing on the cross, and Father granted forgiveness, is not condoning anything that's happening. You still get the consequence of your choices. Number 4, and this is very important, it does not allow injustice to continue. Or we say it this way, it doesn't perpetuate injustice. A good way to think about this one is like in domestic violence cases. A guy beats his girl, she's all beat up, and then he gets remorseful, and then she forgives him. And then he beats her up again, he gets remorseful and repentant, and then she forgives him. And then he beats her up again, she's remorseful and repentant, and got it? And they come meet someone like me, and I go, you need to get out of that relationship. Well, I forgave him. Yeah, I know. You have a brain, use it. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you allow them to continue to harm you. There's a thing called boundaries, right? You're not going to talk to me that way. You're not going to treat me that way. Even Jesus would say to you, hey, if you want to do that in my house, Rick Marks, take it outside, because that doesn't happen here. What do you think that will happen in the vendor carts? You ain't messing with this place. This is my Father's house. You don't do this here. He set boundaries pretty strictly, didn't he? Same thing. It doesn't allow injustice to continue. Next, it does not remove hurt and pain. Some people think, well, I forgave, how come I'm still hurting? Because hurt and pain from what someone did takes time to heal. Hurt and pain takes time. Forgiveness is a choice you make in a moment, but the hurt and pain still take time to heal from. All right? I do know this also. You can't heal from the hurt and pain until you forgive. Because unforgiveness blocks the ability to hurt because you hang on to resentment and bitterness. And lastly, it does not restore trust. Just because I forgive you does not mean I trust you. It doesn't mean I should trust you. Trust is built over time when someone has proven that they're remorseful and repentant and change their behavior. Or, in the great words of that very famous mother of Forrest Gump, sorry is as sorry does. You with me? There's profound in that teaching, in that one statement right there. So now we can ask the question, then why should we forgive? The best answer to that is I want you to think about, if you want to close your eyes to kind of reminisce on it, feel free. Think about how many stones you're carrying in your heart. Now, we want to hurt somebody good, because let's say we got a 4-pound stone, all right? So let's say every offense you get a 4-pound stone, and each of the stones represents someone that you get to hurt who's hurt you. So think about how many stones would you say you're carrying in your heart? 1 stone? Maybe none for some of you. 5 stones? 4? 10 stones? Just feel a number. And you can open your eyes, and then I would ask you this question. The number of stones that you're saying you're carrying in your heart currently, multiply that times 4. 1 times 4 is what? 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 5 times 4 is 20. 10 times 4 is 40. Here's why you must forgive, in my mind. If this is one of my stones, and let's say I have 10 of them, I have the right to throw all of them. And God knows it. I'm just not what? Eligible. I'm not eligible. But I do have the right. And if I say, God, I have the right to stone them, and I'm going to. You know you're not eligible, though, don't you? Yes, sir. Okay, then. Then if you want to hang on to all those stones, son, you will also hang on to all of the weight of those stones. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 2 is 8. What's the weight of the stone? It's the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, the hurt and pain that weighs your soul down, blocks you from being free to love well, that leaks out of you in all forms of dirty fighting and affects other people. The cost to you is all the negative energy that you're choosing to hang on to that harms you and others eventually. But if I was to give up my rights, right? If I gave up my rights, here's my 10 stones, and I give them to God. He can throw them, right? Come unto me, all you weak and what? Heavy laden. That's not because I weigh 50 pounds over. Got it? That's the heaviness of the soul. That's the resentment, the bitterness, all that heaviness that ruins you, that harms you, puts you on medication long term. But if I give it to him, then I just give up all that what? Weight. Neurochemically, your brain can start to right itself. And now you're back to joy and peace in a moment. Because that will rob you of joy and peace. Because your brain will not let you feel the negative, the positive over the negative. You always feel the negative over the positive. Let the stones go. Restore your soul back to peace and love and joy. The fruits of the Spirit. But if I want to hang on to these, you will rob yourself of the fruits of the Spirit in a meaningful way. Forgiveness is really for your value and benefit. It's for your value and benefit. So you don't hang on to all that negative stuff. And by the way, some of you may be mad at God. And let me say this to you. He's not bothered by that. He's not going around sulking. You mad at me, I don't care, I don't love you anymore. He's more mature than that. What he wants you to do is admit that you're mad at him because he didn't do something that you thought he should have done. And he cares that you're mad, and he cares that you're hurt. And if you'll sit and listen to him, he'll show you, I'm not the cause of your struggles. And yes, I could have stopped something from happening, but I chose not to. And if you want to blame me for that, that's okay. See, many of us don't understand God. I had a rabbi say something to me a long time ago, and he was so right about it, Rabbi Gordon. He said, you Protestants particularly. And I said, what about us? He goes, you guys study the Bible, Hebrew, Greek. You study it, you learn it, you educate yourself. I said, you're right, we do. He goes, why? So we know the Bible? No, you don't. You study it so you'll know God. You believe the more you study the Bible, the more you'll know God. He said, and you won't. He's too big to be known. And I went, Rabbi, you're right. And that's why you educate, educate, and educate. Because you think the more you know, the more you know. God's too big to be known. You'll never fully know him. He's way too big. And I was like, truth sets you free, right? So I said, what's the answer? He goes, learn what we learned centuries ago. I said, what's that? Learn to love like him. You'll know him better. Whoa. Learn to love like him, Rick. You'll know him better. There's truth in that statement. A lot of truth in that statement. Cy Rogers said it this way. So many of us get angry at God because he didn't do something and that kind of stuff. We ask questions, why do the people in Africa starve? Why does this happen? Why did that happen? And he said, my answer is, I don't know. I do not give platitude answers to issues that have no answer to them. He said, but here's what I said this a long time ago. I never forgot it. I always remembered it. He said, the Pacific Ocean, it's big. I don't know how big. They say there's mountain ranges, he said, underneath the ocean that are higher than the ones above the ocean. He said, and the deeper we go, they find different new life, don't they? Aaron said, wow, the deeper we go, we find something new. He said, the Pacific Ocean is too big to be fully understood. It will never be fully understood by any man. He said, however, I have experienced the Atlantic Ocean from Washington, Oregon, California, South America, Central America, the Philippines. I've experienced it from Hawaii. He said, no matter where I was with the Pacific Ocean, there's two things I've learned about it. It's wet and it's salty. No matter where you go, it's wet and salty. That's what I do know. God is too big to be known, but there's two things I know about God. He is good and he is loving, and I never question that. Just as much that is wet and salty, he is good and loving. But when we ask God, why did this happen? How can we let that happen? I don't know. But he is good and loving. When we ask those questions of God, we're actually questioning his character. We're questioning whether he really is good and loving. And he goes, I won't question that. Just as much as that is wet and salty, he is good and loving. I don't know. I don't understand it. But he is good and loving, and I do trust that. Does that make sense? And you get a revelation that maybe you'll find it easy to let these go and position your heart back to freedom. These things just weigh your soul down. That's all it does. And as long as you hang on to this, you can't walk in the fullness of the fruits of the Spirit. Your brain won't let you. Because you'll always feel the negative over the positive. But if I gave this up, love, joy, peace flows back into my heart. And now I can experience the fruits of the Spirit. And I'll give you a graphic for it. John 10:10. The thief comes to rob, steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and life more what? What is abundant life? Anybody know what it is? No, you can have Jesus in your house. You can have Jesus, be saved, and not have the abundant life. There are miserable Christians out there. They don't have the... So what is the abundant life? So here's John 10:10. We'll just kind of use this framework. The fruits of the Spirit is really what the abundant life is. All right? The abundant life is when you're living out the fruits of the Spirit. But if this is a timeline, here's the past, here's the present, and here's the future. Where would you experience the fruits of the Spirit? Where do you experience joy on a timeline? Past, present, and future. When? Always in the present, right here, right now. The fruits of the Spirit are always right here, right now, in this room. You either have the fruits or you don't. It's real simple. So the thief has the ability to rob you and keep you from experiencing the fruits of the Spirit in this moment. How? Simple. To the degree you hang on to anger, resentment, bitterness, or your hurts and pain. You can't, by the way, these are issues of the past. You can't live in the fruits of the Spirit. Can't do it. Because you're stuck back here. No man having put his hand on the plow and looking back is fit. The only way you move from here to here is to forgive. Forgiveness lets that go so my heart can be positioned to have joy again and peace in this moment, in this moment, and in this moment, and in this moment, moment by moment into the future. However, to the degree that you're anxious, worry, fearful, insecure, all of that's about fear. Fear is about tomorrow. It's about what hasn't happened. Fear is focused on something out there in the future. Scripture also says, don't worry about tomorrow. All you got is today. Got it? Be anxious for nothing. Why? You're not meant to live in fear tomorrow, and quit living in the past. Live fully in the what? Present. Because you could be dead in an hour, and you wasted an hour of good living being angry or resentful for something you can't fix anyways, and worrying about something that may have never happened. And you wasted an hour of good living. Fully present to yourself and other people. Now, the way you deal with these is 1 John 4, 17, 18. Perfect love casts out fear. The way you deal with fear is you speak love to fear. You don't tell people, get over and suck up and try to trust Jesus. You say things like, wow, I can really see that you're really struggling with that, and there's a fear that you'll be rejected, and I want you to know I care. You speak love to fear. When they hear those words of comfort and encouragement, fear dissipates, it displaces. See, the word cast out is an inaccurate translation in English. The best English word you could use is displaces fear. Love displaces it. It pushes it out. When you put a boat in water, it doesn't cast the water out. It does what? It pushes the water aside. When you speak love to fear, it pushes the fear aside, and I feel a little stronger. But fear, by nature, has a way of creeping back in. You speak love to fear, and it gets pushed aside. And the more you do that, the more secure that person feels. And then they become less fearful over time. Telling them to suck it up, get over it, and trust Jesus just hurts their ears and their heart. And just says, I don't care. God did not give me a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a what? Sound mind. There's healthy fear, then there's a spirit of fear. Spirit of fear is unhealthy because it robs you of sound thinking, robs you of control and power, and robs you of the ability to love others. Yes, sir. The Aiden Fauci guy, yeah. That's a great question. I'm not there, but I just remembered a story. It was about 10 years ago here locally. A black gang man killed a white man, murdered him. The father of the white man befriended the gang member in prison and became a father figure to him and forgave him. And when he finally got out of jail years later, he took that boy into his house because they became a father-son relationship. And I remember listening to that story going, who could do that? The very guy that killed his son is the very one he reached out to love that young boy. And when you heard his testimony, he said, look, I don't agree with what he did to my boy. But I also know, look at where he raised. Look what he was raised around. He was taught to be violent. And no one taught him how to be a man. No one taught him how to love because he never had it. And I'm like, whoa, who could be that guy? I don't have an answer for it because I don't know that. But I would like to think I was that other man at some point. And by the way, that's what God did with us, isn't it? He took his very offenders and brought us home. The very people that hurt his heart, he brings us home to him. Well, wow. Y'all know Jeffrey Dahmer? Serial killer, 8 people. You know where he is right now? He's in heaven. He's in heaven. Before, it was about 6 to 8 months before he was murdered, he was saved. It's a true salvation. Now, if you think, well, how can Jeffrey Dahmer be in heaven? I would say this way. Who are you to think you're better than Jeffrey Dahmer? People are in hell for far less than Jeffrey Dahmer ever did. Are you with me? But the fact that our Father redeemed Jeffrey, our brother, only excites me. You want to know why? Wow. Your love and grace and mercy is that great? Yes. And I'm like, man, oh man, oh man. Then I want to follow you. If you redeem that, and I'm not even that, and I could go to hell for less than that, man, what a love, what mercy, what grace, what patience, what kindness. And all he asked me to do is enter into that with him and love people, not perfectly, but as maturely as I can the same way. And that's going to take grace and it's going to take humility. Because some of the people, I just don't want to. And then I hear their story. And I think, Lord, forgive me for judging them. I didn't know about that. Of course not, Rick, because you don't want to know their story. You're perceiving them through your vision, through your perspective. You have no idea what that person went through.
Is there a time when we are justified or correct and not?
What's an interesting question? My gut tells me no. My gut says no, because forgiveness is meant for my release, not for the relationship. It's for my release.
And if you never forgive, you're a prisoner the rest of your life by your own.
You talked about it earlier. You're a prisoner in your own mind, in your own soul. And the soul is the mind, the will, and the emotion. You'll be in prison to that as well.
So there's a time a person, a Christian, may not forgive,
Mm-hmm.
feels justified in not forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time will not fully understand the abundant life.
On some level, yes.
I'm sorry?
On some level, yes. Very much so. Because the degree you hang on to those rocks. See, this is a great anti-witnessing strategy. Satan knows he can't take you to hell with him. Got it? He doesn't try and take you to hell. He doesn't want you to walk powerfully. So if I convince you to stay angry, resentful, and bitter, and fearful, and afraid, and insecure, where will you not be? Right here, living in the fruits of the Spirit, which is true freedom. So as long as I convince you to stay here and here, that leaks out of you, and people see you, how you talk to people, how you treat people. Cut people off in traffic. And the world watches you and goes, so John, I hear you talk to me about Jesus. I'll also see what you do. I hear you badmouth your mother. I hear you badmouth those people. Don't tell me about your Jesus. You don't believe it either. It's the greatest witnessing anti-witnessing strategy ever. Convince Christians to stay angry, resentful, and bitter, and fearful and insecure. Because people will watch you, and that will show up. All that stuff does show up in your body, in your language, in your attitude. And they'll know right away, you don't believe it either. Why should I? To me, Satan's smart. Stay angry, stay resentful, stay bitter. Go ahead. I'll help you justify it. And he will. Only problem is you rob your soul of peace and joy and freedom, but it leaks out of you in all forms of dirty fighting. And people see it and go, I don't want your God. You're no different than what I was raised in. The world's watching us. many years ago, Dr. Vines preached a message. It was in 2004, in the fall. I think it was in October. And the title of the sermon was "Why You Should Join First Baptist Church," which I thought was a selfish title, anyways. And he went through the big children's building. I always call it the Six Flags Over Jesus building. He went through all this stuff, and then he said this. He goes, birds build their nests in steeples. Well, I'm no dummy. I knew where he's going. I looked at my wife and go, I've also seen bird nests in outhouses. And she said, you need to stop it. I went, mm-mm. I said, watch, it's coming. I don't know what it is, it's coming. Birds build their bird house in steeples. And birds have little brains, don't they? And people are like, uh-huh. You know the term bird brain? And he looked right at the camera. It was live TV back in those days. He looked right at the TV and said, and you men out there watching me who don't take your children to church, you're nothing but a bunch of brainless bird brains. And that congregation erupted in laughter and applause. About 2.5, 3 weeks later, I met a guy. I was talking with him, and I wanted to find out where he was spiritually. And he said, don't go there, Rick. I said, what do you mean? He said, about 2 weeks ago, I was thumbing through the stations on Sunday morning. He saw that. You know what he said to me? I had a father like that. I don't need your God. Don't talk to me about it. The congregation applauded a misrepresentation of Father's heart. Father never talks to anybody that way and never treats people that way. They're watching us. They're watching me. I'm not perfect, but can I do it maturely? That's the key. I didn't cover it, but in your handout, I gave you what does an emotional infant, what does an emotional child, what does an emotional adolescent, and what does an emotional adult look like? The gospel is to mature us to be a healthy, mature adult. That's its purpose, is so we can love maturely, but you can't love maturely until you yourself are mature. Let me go back here and kind of cover this, and we'll wrap up our day, all right? I turned it off, no wonder. So let me go back to, I should be up here. I think I have them up here. No, I don't. All right, so in your handout, you'll see them listed there. Let's we'll read through them real quickly there. Let me find them. There's a handout here. It says emotional stages of development. You have that? Okay. Here's what I'm going to do as we wrap up our day. We're going to read through these, but before I do, I'm going to compare each stage with the chronological stage so you get a parallel for it, all right? So let's think about, I'm 61. It's possibly 61 and still emotionally a child, right? Because intellect doesn't make you mature. It makes you smart, but you can be a very smart person, a very immature person. Got it? We want maturity in love, but to mature in love, you got to become a mature adult. So we're going to take each of these and look at the chronological stage, all right? So chronologically, an infant can do nothing for itself. It is completely dependent on everything in the world for survival. So if we took a 3 or 4 month old, put it over here, leave it alone, do nothing for it, eventually it's going to cry and scream a lot, but eventually it's going to die. Because an infant requires the world to focus on it. Normal for a chronological infant. So in the world of a chronological infant, that actually isn't mom's breast, it's actually mine. And when it's screaming and crying, what it's really saying is, get over here and give me my breast, I want something to eat. Get over here and change my diaper. Normal for a chronological infant. But an adult who is an infantile adult operates the same way. So we'll look at here and we'll read it together. You possess what I want and need, and you owe it to me. Even if it is love, sex, touch, attention, love, approval, and respect. You get nothing, but you exist for my needs. And I'm entitled to all of you, your energy, time, and focus. And I have a right to be outraged and angry when you are not there for me. My needs are constant, and I can never get enough of what I want, so I feel helpless. It is your responsibility to never let me get to helplessness. Thus, you can have no thoughts, feelings, social interactions, desires, and interests that do not center on me and please me. So since I have to stay in control and in charge, I have to control you and stay in charge of you. I cannot live life without you since I'm really dependent on you for my sense of value and worth. If you're taking notes, write the word tyrants next to these people, because these are tyrants. They lack compassion. They really operate this way. I want what I want when I want it. And you are nothing more than an object to give me what I want. If you stay in a relationship with one of these adults, you will allow them to strip you of your value and worth. They are takers in the extreme. Now, the next one is what I was when I got married. Remember, I told you last night, my dad was emotionally a teenager, even to the day he died, so he couldn't raise his kids being emotionally mature adults. So when I got married, I was mostly a child. Now, chronological children have verbal skills. They can say, I want juice, I want to play, I want to hug, right? They still are dependent on the world for their needs. But a child has to move from the infant posture of that's mine to that's yours and I want it. You have something that I want, so I got to get it from you. So when a child wants something, what do children do to get what they want? What do they do? What's that? Pout, sulk, whine, threaten. I ain't playing with you no more. I don't love you. You're not my friend. You just parent that. By the way, children will also bully you, won't they? They'll hit. They'll throw things. All right? That's just child behavior. You parent that. But an adult who emotionally is an infant, which is what I was when I got married, operates the same way. Here we go. I have needs and wants, and you have what I need. Since it's not mine, I have to take these things from you, such as affection, approval, respect, love, and attention. So I have to manipulate, control, whine, sulk, punish, charm, or suck up to you to get you to give me what I want when I want it. And I will seek revenge and punish you passively or overtly if you do not give me what I want. And I have to get even with you for the pain that you cause me for not doing what I want. So I will blame, debate you, or run from you to get my way. And when you focus on things that are not centered on or about me, I interpret this to mean that you don't love me, that I'm not good enough for you, or that you're about to reject me. So I will use negative tension to get your attention, and I'll still do what I want. This is me testing you to see if you really love me, whether you think I'm important or if I can trust you. And this is also because I need constant reassurance and security regarding my lovability, my importance, my adequacy, and whether you really want me. Now, Wonder Llewellyn said in those early years, you're like a boulder around my neck. I was, because I didn't deal with conflict well. If she didn't give me what I want, I'd go sulk for 2 or 3 hours and punish her with silence. It was manipulative, but it's the best I had the way I was raised. Make sense? Now, teenagers, chronologically, are trying to figure out 2 things. Their brains are trying to figure out developmentally independence versus dependence. Mature adults learn interdependence. But teenagers, if you tell a teenager to do something or give them feedback, their brain interprets it as if you're treating them like a what? A child. And you get things like, don't tell me what to do. Adult men currently in this country are allowing video games to destroy their marriages. The number one reason college freshman males are failing their first year is they can't put a controller down. It's the number one reason. Ron Tier out of Ohio says it this way: they're chronological males with little boy issues still. They've never grown up. They've never grown up. That was my father. You couldn't tell him to do anything. I'm going to do what I want. They lock themselves in their bedroom, their man cave. You're not going to control me. So what does an adult who's an adolescent look like? Here we go. My need for independence and autonomy is threatened by needing others because I'm supposed to be able to stand on my own without others. So when you suggest something to me or tell me what to do, I hear it as an attack and your desire to control me. So I'll let you know I don't need you, and I'll make sure you will not tell me what to do. I feel rebellious when you try to give me input, correct, give advice, or direct me in any manner. I already know everything, and there's nothing you can tell or teach me. And because I believe I am an adult, I want the power and privilege of adulthood. I just don't want the consequences. I have to compare myself to others in every way because I have to prove myself to everyone, but mostly to myself. Thus, I will not listen to you with care and compassion because I perceive your truths and thoughts and feelings as a criticism of me, my thoughts, my beliefs, and my behavior. So I'll distance myself from you, and when I go away from you, you can't control me. And in this space, I feel freedom, independence, and secure. I am unable to consider the effects and consequences of what I do since I take unnecessary and harmful risks, and I find breaking rules and crossing boundaries freeing. And the reason I do this is because I must prove to you, but mostly to myself, that I'm not dependent, though deep down inside, I really do know I need others. Mostly America are these kinds of people. The breakdown of the family doesn't develop you to mature adulthood because we have mostly emotional children raising children. I quoted some books you guys read on that last night. So what does a mature adult look like? We're about to read through it. It is my contention, I'm not saying I am right, but I believe I'm right, that if we lived out the heart of the gospel, it forces you to become this person. Now, the other three in conflict, how do you know where you are? It's not in the good times. When an infant's happy, they're great to be around. When children are happy, they're great to be around. This part of you as an adult shows up in conflict. It's where your brain defaults to. Because that's the only emotional level you have to deal with conflict, is at one of those levels. Make sense? So then, these three, infant, child, adult, adolescents, in conflict, they go to the lower order animal brain, deal with the fight, flight, and freeze, and all kinds of dirty fighting tactics because they're really in pride, self-protection. Research shows mature adults in conflict, this is going to be cool. They move to compassion to handle conflict. Immature adults say this, no, what I'm saying is, mature adults go, are you saying? It's just that simple. Maturity goes, are you saying? Immaturity, no, what I'm saying is. It's that simple. So what does a mature adult look like? Here we go. I have the ability to deal with relationships through compassion and cooperation, even in conflict. I can listen and hear your thoughts and feelings without demanding, rebelling, manipulating, or controlling you. I have the ability to speak my truths lovingly and respectfully, and I will share the truths about our relationship, knowing that sometimes these thoughts might hurt you emotionally. Faith for all the wounds of a friend. I have the ability to share my hurts, fears, anger, and feelings of rejection and betrayal with goodwill and respect and not withdraw from you. And this one's very important. And I can also join with you in your hurts and pains and listen attentively without taking your thoughts and feelings personally. I can ask for what I want and need without manipulating, running, smothering, or intimidating you. And the reasons I can do these things is because I already believe that I am okay. I know my strengths and weaknesses, and I don't let these define my personhood. I know I am lovable and adequate, so I'm able to cooperate with others. I understand that we are both different, and that we can love, be loved, have different interests, and find fulfillment in life in different ways. Because I know that I am loved by God and others, and that the need to bond, attach, connect, and be intimate with others is a basic human need. It's not a sign of weakness. It's just a confession that I'm human. Thus, I have the ability to join with you in both our concerns and with empathy. That was my target. I was going to become that guy. That is everything I've done, because I figure if I become this guy, then I would earn the right to comfort my wife. And everything I've been doing for 27 years is become this guy. Now, if you ask me today, am I there? I would probably tell you no. My wife would tell you yes. Because I know I have more things to work on within myself, right? But my wife told me 4 years ago that I was that guy. And I just teared up and told her, thank you. I just want to be that for you and for others, to represent Father's heart well. That was Jesus, by the way. That was him. And you'll learn tomorrow, HREG, humility, expectancy, goodwill, and living for us, that core value graphic right there, that was my value system that drove me here. It was just that up there. No matter what you do, be humble, be respectful, be empathic, and have people treat people with goodwill, and quit focusing on you. Start focusing on who? Us. That right there was my mantra, my value system that drove me to become this person down the road. That's how I got there. It wasn't rocket science. It was just what Father was teaching me along the way. You got some stones? Let them go. Yes, sir.
I've followed you through all these missions, and it makes me want to, first of all, ask the question, are these the definitions sort of generational? For example, my childhood was quite different than my son's childhood. I think affluence had a lot to do with that, and I think affluence just has
Yes, I do. I don't have an answer right now. I've not thought of it that way. I'll tell you the first thing my brain goes to. It's not about poverty or wealth. And I can mention one name to prove it. Mother Teresa. She lived in poverty. And yet she's the most mature person. Read her works. Listen to her thinking. She was a very, very mature woman. A woman of great faith and great emotional intelligence. And yet she lived in poverty. She lived in poverty. That's the first thing that came to mind when you said that one. But Mother Teresa, it can't be about poverty. It's about mindset. I could be in poverty and have a mindset that people owe me. Well, that's not about poverty. That's about a mindset.
Well, then Jesus, would be a good example. Material for poverty. He virtually lived from the
He was a nomad in a sense, right? He was a nomad. He just traveled around. Itinerant preacher.
she and he, Mother Teresa and Jesus, very close. Of course, not cheap in West different ways. But it kind of bothers me that if it's up to this point in our history as a nation, what in the world, if we survive, are we going to be like in the next generation or two? Because I think we're facing some incredible challenges like
Oh.
never before on many fronts.
So, if you'd like to get another perspective of this, now I'm not brilliant, but I read 4 to 5 books a month, so I do read a lot. Got it? Have you ever studied the decline of nations? All right, so here's a simple one to read. Just do a Google search, Decline of Nations, Kirby Anderson. Just read that. It's on Google. All right, just Decline of Nations, Kirby Anderson. Read this article he wrote. It's a good 1,000-foot view. And he shows you that the great nations of old, Rome, Greece, etc., went through the same 7 stages for their decline. All 7 stages that led to their decline were related to the breakdown of the family. If you take those seven stages they all went through, America is in the last stage. We're in that last stage based on world history patterns.
Another work was done by Arnold Toynbee. 19 out of 21 of the world's greatest civilizations came from within.
Yes. It's the breakdown of the family. Stalin and Gramsci and Lenin were right. They understood America's greatness has to do with its values and strength of the families. You destroy those, you'll destroy America from within. You'll weaken it. And they weren't wrong. This is why Lenin, when he first took over as Bolshevik Revolution, he initiated a number of laws early on. One of those laws was to make divorce legal. Now, why would you make divorce legal?
Encourage the breakup of the family.
And to undo the influence of the church in the family. Because now people are going to the church to get divorced. I mean, the state to get divorced. The church will lose its influence in affecting families. And Gramsci, who wrote over 2,000 pages, he was in prison under Mussolini. We've been under Gramsci's teachings for a long time. This is not conspiracy, this is history. Just go read it. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's history. Nobody reads this stuff. Gramsci argued that America will never fall until you undo the marriages in their families. And he said the best way to undo America is destroy marriages. And he said for one reason, if you destroy the marriages in America, particularly in the churches, the church in 2 generations will have no influence in the culture. Because the kids raised in those families will have not seen the God that the church talks about. And they won't believe it either. Now, he also said, you have to take communist teaching under the term socialism, liberalism, and you must put it into the arts, into education, higher education, the media, all right? And that started in this country in the 1930s. That's when all this started, coming over here. And he said in 2 generations, as you're what he called a cultural hegemony, as you're building this cultural shift in the culture around socialist ideals, and you're destroying marriage at the same time, these kids raised over here won't believe what they're taught. They'll believe what the culture is teaching them, and which is where we are today. It's worked. It's worked. They weren't dumb. They're very patient and calculating. And that's what it is. But I'm an idealist. God is still God. Rome is still around. Greece is still around. We'll probably be around on some level. We may be a church that's underground, but that's okay. We'll just be worshiping as our Christian brothers and sisters do, and the ones in the Middle East do. God is still God. He's still in control. And the other thing is, and I'll close with this, the other thing that Sai said around the whole idea thing is, I don't know why things happen. God's too big to be understood. He said, but I know this. God created it all. And God knows because I created it all, I'm responsible for it all. Because I created it all, I am responsible. I'm not the cause of this. Satan and you are the cause of these things. When I made the earth, I gave it to Adam to manage and control. Adam turned it over to Satan. He's now the prince of the power of the air. This is Satan's world. Satan does these evil things. But God also knows I do allow it. You don't understand my motives. You don't have to understand. Just trust that I'm good. Just trust that I'm loving. But because I created it all, I'm also the one that has to fix it all. Because the buck ultimately stops with who? Me. That's revelation. I will fix this thing. And then I'm going to recreate it all. New heaven and a new earth. See, people think, we're going to spend eternity in heaven. I'm like, no, you're not. You don't read the Bible well. He's recreating this. The difference is no tree to eat from to kick you out. Make sense? We're coming back. New heaven, new earth, and we'll all be back here. Just no sin. The buck stopped with me. I will fix it in my time and my will. Just trust that I'm good. You don't understand me. It's not your job to. Love well. All right, sir. I'm done. Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
You know, this thing about forgiveness has me stumped sometimes. Because I consider myself a forgiving person. But there are sometimes it takes me a lot longer to forgive than other times. Other times, maybe it's because I wasn't hurt as bad. That's a possibility. But I have one thing that's bothering me, and it's taking me a long time to forgive.
All right.
And there's no doubt that it doesn't have something to do with our physical, it would help me if I could let it go.
So in your handout, thank you. I'll just go ahead and mention it to you. There's this worksheet that I created many years ago called Free to Forgive. If there's something that you're having a hard time forgiving, answer these questions. All right? What this is designed to do, it's designed to unpack your unforgiveness, to give you clarity about what it's about, and it moves you to the possibility of making a declaration to forgive that person if you want to. All right? So there's a help for you. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Well, let's see what happens if we mess this up. And so they gave them
Yes. We want justice. This is why the book, The Shack, was so profound, not among certain religious leaders, but among the masses. Because the point behind the book, The Shack, was the killer of Mackenzie's daughter, serial killer, was never caught. And yet Papa told Mackenzie, you don't know what happened to him as a boy that led him being a serial killer, but I love him just as much as your daughter who was killed by him. And you begin to realize sometimes there's not a justice in this world. There's not. We want it. The question is, there is a day coming, right? The question is, who pays the justice? Who pays it? But you're right. There is a part that wants justice. That's why you have the sexual abuse activists right now going after the pastors who covered up their sexual abuse and allowed a pedophile preacher to go on into other churches. They want justice. I get it. Makes sense to me. You covered this up, that more people got hurt. We all want justice, don't we, on some level? But in the greater sense is, you can still forgive and fight for justice. Did you get that? Forgiveness means I don't have a resentment or bitterness to you, but I still want to stop a wrong. That's possible. That's possible. Now, I'm saying all this. I'm not saying anything we're talking about is easy. That's a journey. Forgiveness is a journey. You take time, but at some point, you still have to come to a decision to let it go, drop the stones, and walk away. Ryan? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it's all about humility, which we'll delve into tomorrow. And that which you freely receive, freely what? Rick, I freely forgive you. You receive it, so you give it. Galatians 6:1, brethren, if anyone is overcome in a fault, you who are mature, restore that person in a spirit of meekness, gentleness, lest you be overcome in a fault. In other words, how are you going to be treated when you mess up? Treat people the same way. That makes sense? Hey, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. And I say me, it's really me and Luella. even though she had to work last night and today because she works on Saturday at a school uniform shop on Beach. She works every Saturday. She was praying for you guys and asked how it went last night. And so thank you, and she should be here with me tomorrow morning. So you get to see the lady I revere and honor and talk about. So anyways, can I close this in prayer? Father, thank you so much for forgiveness. Thank you for love. Thank you for mercy. Thank you for grace. And thank you that it's okay to not be okay. And that we can't make you mad at us. We can't make you hate us. We can't make you walk away from it because you never leave nor forsake. It's because you already say that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. The psalmist says, how marvelous are your thoughts of us, O Lord. There's so many wonderful thoughts. You can't even count them as grains of sand. Thank you for those marvelous thoughts, even when we don't have them. Help us live out of the fullness of what you see in us and what you believe in us. I pray that we might encourage and inspire others to be the best version of who there can be in Christ. And I pray for this church that it becomes a greater lighthouse, that it becomes a greater place of love within and without. And I ask a special anointing and blessing on the leadership and the members that are here. It's in Jesus' name I pray for your glory and for their benefit and for the benefit of this area of Jacksonville. It's in Christ's name.